All right, what's up everyone? I'm Dylan with Acadian Elegance Furniture, and today we're going to be flipping this mini bookshelf that I found into a matching set with this dresser right here that I put in my son's nursery. Let's get to it. So this bookshelf is just the box and then the one shelf. So I'm going to paint it Mesa taupe to match the same color that I did on the dresser. And I've got an idea for the legs. I'm gonna have to see if it works. And then the shelf, I don't know if I can or not, but I'm thinking if I can, I'm gonna do a paint wash on it to match the top of the dresser. As always, the very first step to any furniture flip that I do is cleaning it. You can really use whatever. It's just to get all the crud and dust and grease off. I usually use Simple Green all-purpose cleaner. And then it does leave a little bit of a residue, and I go back with just straight water and rinse it off. Now, if I was gonna go in and restain this or refinish it the way it is, I would have to sand it back to bare wood. But because I'm painting it to match the dresser, all I have to do is scuff sand it just to give that paint and primer something to grab onto. So I'm gonna start with an 80 grit because it's got some deep scratches and stuff that I wanna try to get out. Normally, if you're just scuff sanding, you only need really like a 120 or maybe higher. But because it's got those deep scratches, I'm gonna go ahead and start with a 80 grit and work my way up to a 120. So you can see, all I'm really doing is just roughing up the surface so that when I paint and prime it, it has something to really grab onto and stick. And then I will go back after I'm done with the sander and hit some of these rounded edges with some hand paper, just to get where the sander can't really get good because it's curved. So unfortunately, while I was sanding with the sander, I did find a couple of pretty deep gashes that I'm going to need to fill with my wood filler. But I'm going to go ahead and finish hand sanding the edges in places I couldn't get with the sander, and then I'll come back and fill that with the wood filler. Also, make sure you always vacuum out the underside of your furniture. Lots of dust and spider webs. Anytime I find anything that could be useful in future projects, or even depending on how I'm refinishing the project I'm on, I normally take it off and save it. For example, these little rubber feet that just screw on to the bottom of this bookshelf here, you never know when you're going to be working on something and think, hey, I wish I had something like those little rubber feet. And then you've just got a stash of all the random goodies that you found over all the furniture you've done. Another thing I'm going to do as part of the prep for this bookshelf is I'm going to take some of this 2x material I have, some 2x4s, just some scrap I had laying around, and cut it to fit in this space here so that I can use it to attach my legs to when I put the legs on that are going to make it match the dresser. Now unfortunately, both of my power saws are tied up in other places, so I'm just going to be using this hand miter box. But just goes to show, you can do these kind of projects with fancy tools or without. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut these down with this handsaw. Now, like I said, you can definitely do this with hand tools if that's all you got, but I'm suddenly reminded how lucky I am to have the power tools that I have. So it's next day. Off camera, I went ahead and put those 2x4s in, glued them in, screwed them in, put a couple of pocket holes here in the thick portion, and then screwed through the wood in the back. So that later on we can have something to screw into to put the legs on. Now you can really use any kind of wood filler you want. I know a lot of furniture flippers typically go for the 2-part Bondo wood filler. Me personally, I always go for the Czar indoor-outdoor water-based wood filler, so that's what I'm going to use here. Now in the beginning I had said we were going to use the same shelf that it came with and do a paint wash to match the top of the dresser. But if you look here, you can see unfortunately this shelf is all particle wood and it's just a fake veneer. So instead of going with this, I actually went to the store and I got this. It's just a pine panel, not very big. It was like $8, I think. But it's gonna be plenty strong enough and exactly what we need to make a new shelf out of. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna mark how long I need it to be and go ahead and cut it now that I got my saw back with me today. And then we can go ahead and do the paint wash and get this ready to go on the bookshelf. I'm just going to use some sandpaper and ease those edges before we get into finishing it. Now this is totally not necessary, but I do on the front of these shelves like to give it a little bit of a round over with that sandpaper whenever I'm sanding it. Just give it a little bit more of a finished feel. Give it a spritz with some plain water, wipe it down, and then I'm going to get a paint wash mixed up and I'll show you how that goes. Now I know the front of it is like impossible to see, but this is just Rust-Oleum's Mesa Taupe color. It's like a nice kind of tan, almost gray, but mostly tan. And basically all a paint wash is a little bit of paint to a lot more water, and you're basically making a stain out of paint. So I'm gonna mix that mix, brush it onto here, give it a minute to sit, wipe it back off, and we'll see how it looks and how many coats I need to do. Always stir your paint. Always. It's a really pretty color. I don't know how well that'll come through on there. But you'll see at the end, it's also the same color that we're going to be using to paint this to match the dresser. Now you don't really want to add too much paint when you're doing a paint wash. A little bit goes a long way. You can see I've just got a little bit of that here in this container. And I'm going to really dilute this with water. And I've only got a small section here, so I really don't need that much at all. And you can just add a little bit of water at a time, mix it up and see how it looks to you. Like I said, just do whatever you think looks good. I'm gonna do about that much water, maybe a little bit more, and paint it on and see how that goes. And I'm just gonna be applying this with one of these cheap chip brushes. And you just wanna do this as evenly as possible. And don't forget the edges. And then you just come back with a dry rag or paper towel and you wipe off the extra. Now I'm not going for a very saturated look, so I think for me that one coat is going to be exactly what I'm looking for. But like I said, if you're looking for something that's the color comes through more, just do as many coats as you need, wipe off in between, and see how it looks each step of the way. Alright, now I've got the camera switched over to the other side of the shop now so you can get a better view of me painting. I went ahead and sanded down that little spot that we filled. Now I'm going to show you a little trick that I like to do. I like to get my paint gun all hooked up, ready to go, but without the tank, so it's just blowing air. And I'll use that to blow all the dust off of whatever I'm about to paint, just to get it ready one last time, just because I don't have a spray nozzle for my air compressor. I usually use the Zinsser water-based Smart Primer for all my projects, and I just like it because it's easy to thin down with a little bit of extra water to put into my paint gun, and I've just gone ahead and thinned that out here. And once I get this all hooked up and set up the way I want, I normally do a couple of test sprays on my curtain there just to make sure everything is the way I want it. Looks good. Let's get masked up and start spraying. I actually ended up running out of primer, but I think I had just enough to get a decent coverage. Once that dries, I'll come back and sand it with a really high grit just to get any bumps and any high spots knocked down, and then we'll get ready for paint. So, quick break to talk about me for a second. It's been several days since I've been out here able to work on this because, long story short, I've had some back issues most of my life with my sciatic. And the last few days it's gotten really bad. To simplify it all, it's gotten to a point where I basically had to go to the emergency room. And we thought I had a bulging disc, and I finally got an MRI. They were thinking they were going to have to take me in for emergency surgery. Finally got an MRI, and turns out all of my discs are majorly bulging and causing me a lot of problems. So along with that, I'm not really sure what's going to happen with me being able to go back to work or being able to do this full-time like I was. Not really sure what's going to happen. So I'm going to try to get this bookshelf finished without lifting it or moving it. Whenever I get it finished, I'll have somebody come out and help me move it inside to go in the nursery for my son's room. And if you've made it this far in the video, first of all, thank you. You have no idea how much that means to me. Second of all, I really hope you'll finish the video and share it with a few of your friends. I'm still just now trying to get this whole YouTube thing figured out and videos figured out for my furniture, and not just making money from the furniture. We're trying to make money through content also. And right now, especially with me not being able to work, that'll help a lot. So if you've made it this far, you've shared it with a friend, just know I appreciate you. Let's try to get this bookshelf done. I'm just gonna get a quick second coat on it, put the legs on it, and all that's left is a B-roll.